Well, here we go with Chapter 3, Founding the Southern Colonies, and basically here's some big ideas that we're going to go in depth about with Chapter 3. We'll talk about the colonization of the Chesapeake region, and this is the region here where it's Virginia, it's Maryland, it is Washington, D.C., that area of the United States, and that's the first colonization that happens with the English colonists coming into what is now going to be eventually the United States and the American colonies. We'll also talk about the importance of tobacco in the Chesapeake region, and really that's the thing that really makes the Chesapeake region very, very important, and which really elevates its status in the world, I guess you could say, from just a outpost to a serious moneymaker type of colony for the English. Also talk about how when more settlers come, how colonial English society takes shape. And what that means is basically when more settlers come, we have more diversity, more different kinds of people. Who's on top, who's on bottom, what does the society really look like? And we'll talk about then how that characterizes the society of the southern colonies as well. So the early Chesapeake colonists. First of all, let's talk about English aspirations. We've got to start off with James the First here. And here's King James. And really what he's trying to do is capitalize on the Spanish naval defeat in 1588. And what they're trying to do basically is get into North America here and to exploit Spain's weakness, because Spain, if you remember from last chapter, is basically not going to colonize anything above Florida. They're going to focus here off the map here in Mexico and Peru and so on and so forth. So King James is like, let's go, let's get into Virginia here, let's get into these areas, and that's exactly what they do. Pardon King James for obstructing the words there, but basically he's just like any other monarch. He's trying to gain great wealth, and that's exactly what King James is about, and why colonists are sent into North America. And so you have this company here that's going to start this colony in Virginia called the Virginia Company, and it's basically a bunch of merchants and businessmen, and what they're trying to do is basically convince King James, hey, we're your people to go in there and settle. Okay, now what they do basically is it's not them that's necessarily going to settle, but what they do is they advertise in England for people to go over and settle. Now, if you're a settler, you're going over to these areas, these uncharted areas, with great risk. And so what the Virginia Company is trying to do is to advertise these things to make it so that people will want to go. And so they come out with pamphlets, and they come out with all these ideas, these rosy kind of ideas about what it's going to be like, and they attract a large number of people that for various reasons are excited about going over across the sea, because it's not exactly an easy journey, just one going across the Atlantic Ocean, which takes weeks, but also just trying to get colonized and settled. One problem that the English had is back early in the 1500s, far before King James is going to set out by virtue of the Virginia Company here, is that the Roanoke colony basically, for inexplicable reasons, dies out. There's been a lot of debate among historians and people that study this stuff about what happened to these first English colonists from Roanoke, and frankly, nobody really knows. My personal theory is that they came, they set up a camp, they tried to coexist with Native Americans. They had no idea what they were doing as they were setting up their colony. They didn't know the land. They didn't understand how to farm in a new climate or whatever it might be, and they basically just died out. And the reason I think that is because of what's going to happen to Jamestown, which is right here. Jamestown is going to be basically, of course, named after King James, and you can see the geography here. We got the James River, and this is what you call the Chesapeake Bay, and this is basically the area here where the British are going to settle. So what happens to Jamestown? Well, what challenges faced the early Chesapeake colonists? Well, Jamestown is located right here in what is present-day Virginia, and it's basically in December 1606, 144 Englishmen make landfall. Now, these 144 Englishmen are trying to set up a defensible fort, and all English colonial outposts at this point are basically set up, and you'll see some pictures in a few moments of having lots of wood that surrounds their camp so that they can basically defend themselves against Native Americans. And they felt, for whatever reason, that the Jamestown, if I go back to this map here, they felt that the Jamestown settlement here, surrounded by rivers, that the James River would be a very nice defensible fort. So if I keep on going here, and so they, as time went on, what you're looking at here is some pictures of some of the replicas of ships that the colonists would have taken. And here's a really nice picture of what Jamestown sort of would look like. This is typical English fort, where basically everything, and you can see the Native Americans are out here, and it's to protect them against them. But and here's another picture of what it actually looks like today if you were to go. It's kind of a national historic monument. I can only imagine what cooking would have been like. It would have probably been pretty tough. I mean, certainly no microwaves or natural gas, but anywho. It's a picture of a Jamestown chapel. Of course, religion was very important to the English, although religion wasn't the primary reason why they settled. And so as the Jamestown settlement gets set up, we have a lot of issues that are brewing. First of all, the relationship with Native Americans. The relationship with Native Americans by British colonists is always varying. And there's one thing to keep in mind for this whole course is that when you look at the early history of our country, Native Americans are very much pawns in a big game. They're friends sometimes with the English, they're friends sometimes with the French, they're friends sometimes with the American colonists a little bit later, and it just really depends on a lot of things. The politics of the situation, and that's what I see when I learn about this. But when the English settlers come, they're very worried about Native Americans and what Native Americans can do. Characterizing relationships between Native Americans and colonists are, again, the Columbian Exchange, diseases that are being spread, weapons that are being traded. The colonists have a tough time trying to set up a stable colony, and they tend to rely on the Native Americans in order to help them through some of the issues that they're facing, issues of not being adapted to the climate, issues of starvation, all that kind of stuff. And so they trade weapons with the Native Americans. They also trade diseases. Now, the Indians, pardon me, Native Americans, showed early restraint. They could have pretty much wiped out the Jamestown colonists if they wanted to, because the Jamestown colonists had absolutely no idea what they were doing. And later on, and I will say this later in the PowerPoint, a lot of the Jamestown colonists that came, many of them were from the wealthier classes, not necessarily the laboring classes. And so you have all these guys that are gentlemen that have people do their work for them usually, and they have no, like literally no idea what they're doing. It's really sad, and I can only imagine the Native Americans must have been laughing at these people like a bunch of knuckleheads, right? So it's interesting here that the Native Americans could have wiped these guys out, but they didn't, and you got to wonder why that might be. Perhaps you can think about that as you go on. The English really had a difficult time thriving in this colony. Like I said, and this is the thing that I just clicked on, but many were not laborers. Many were what you call the gentry, which is like the upper class of society, and their servants. Out of the 144 initial Englishmen, many of them are these people, and so there's just not enough people that understand how to do work and how to persevere through hardship and things like that. And it's just a mess. Your book refers to it as the starving time. It's very difficult to get a stable colony to thrive. And not only that, in 1622, you have Chief Opechancanough, that's basically had enough of the English and starts to attack. And so the relationships with Indians become strained, and this is a very bloody war. It's a long series of wars that English colonists are going to fight with Native Americans. Out of this, 1/3 of the English die because of this Native American, I guess, uprising, you could say. And so the English, instead of electing to coexist with Native Americans, decide, hey, let's just exterminate them, kill them all, and so that tends to be the relationship with Native Americans at this point. Now again, that's all going to change depending on the political situation, so think about that. Powhatan is another Native American chief. This picture is kind of interesting. It kind of shows, I think, from a settler's point of view about the savage Native Americans, thus reinforcing the stereotype. But you got to wonder what precipitated this and did this, and who struck first. So that brings us to this whole idea of private company to royal government. And what happens is that things are going so bad in Jamestown that King James is like, hey, we got to get things straightened out, and what's really going on there. So what King James decides to do is to send investigators to figure out what's going on. And instead of having the Virginia Company control the colony, King James says, you know what, you guys have done such a horrible job trying to maintain this colony. You're getting in fights with Native Americans, and it's just a big mess and a big blot on my reign. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this colony a royal colony. And so King James just basically revokes the charter of the Virginia Company and says basically to the Virginia Company, like, you guys are knuckleheads. I'm going to take this over, okay? And I'm going to appoint my own people to run this thing. They found out that mortality was caused more by diseases than Native American raids. So that was an interesting finding, and basically what that means is that Native Americans were obviously a big part of this, but is there a better way to make this work? If the mortality rates, if the death rates are caused more by disease, is there a way that we can coexist instead with Native Americans? and to make things work. So one interesting thing is that King James allows some features of local government to remain. He allows the House of Burgesses, which is basically a representative government body, to remain, which the people can elect. But all in all, this is a royal controlled, essentially a commonwealth. In fact, today the state of Virginia on their state seal says Commonwealth of Virginia. The governor is going to be appointed by King James, basically so that King James can keep control of the colony. So, in short, and this is the first part of the video here and subsequent lectures. In short, what do we have? We have a colony that struggles to survive, gets in wars with Native Americans, and King James essentially says, no, I'm going to control it. You get some representation, but I'm going to control things here from now on. So in subsequent lectures we'll get to the rest of the chapter. So thank you.